Good morning, all. Dr. Pete here. Welcome to my morning show. Couple of announcements before we get started this morning. The first is that I'm back on with my Friday morning shows at 7 a.m. every single Friday. It's a recorded event, and I'm also live on my YouTube channel and Facebook and on LinkedIn right now. So if you missed the show and you want to catch up with it, you can go to my YouTube channel at Dr. Pete's Keto Club, and you can find the recorded show there. And the second thing is that those of you that listen to me out there, you know that I'm a nutrition network health practitioner. I'm also a PhD biochemist, and I focus in the area of the analysis of prior research that's been published about the basis of, or the biochemistry that drives chronic metabolic diseases. And I'm a specialist in the area of gout. Some would say, they call me the gout guy, but I have been actively coaching for 5 years now, and for whatever reason, I work with the sickest people. So serious type 2 diabetics, chronic kidney disease, cardiovascular disease, sugar addiction, which is usually associated with trying to reverse or being successful in reversing those conditions. And then, of course, I think my biggest impact is in the area of uric acid and in gout. One of the things that I want to let the listeners know about going into this morning is that of the things that I do in terms of specializing in the area of gout was the gout intensive that I ran a couple of times last year. By far, that is the most popular program that I've offered. But there were issues with it. Number one, I was too hardcore in the area of science. And then because there's an understanding issue here by the recipients, right? And so I have been rethinking that a lot and trying to figure out ways to communicate the science better so that we can get better remission. And then the second thing is that these programs are expensive. I think when you think about expense in the long run, you have to remember that if you can reverse a chronic metabolic disease, that means that you're not going to be going to the doctor. You're not going to be paying the copays. You're not going to be going to the hospital, for example. So in the long run, these upfront costs become somewhat meaningless in the sense that down the road, you won't have these significant expenses. But in light of this, what I've done is move my program into a Patreon. And I have the link in my show notes. And everything that was in the gout intensive, including the chat coaching, is now there. And it's for a very low subscription cost. And I'm going to try doing things that way because I believe it makes gout remission more accessible to the masses, to the people, to you, the listener, who might be suffering from gout, in order to deal with that illness without having the extensive or more expensive outlay in order to learn how to do this for yourself through lifestyle. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. And this week, and in my show now on the Friday morning shows, I plan on being more generalized and more extensive about why low carb is the way to go in terms of the reversal of chronic disease. And one of the things that I think practitioners learn right away when we first start doing this, and I've been doing this for 5 years now, and I've worked with a lot of different clients, is that there is a lot of pushback. Even if we consider what we do in the electronic forums, and I talk in a lot of different places, including speaking occasionally at Low Carb USA, for example, and so on. And we are always dealing with pushback. And the pushback mainly has to do with the realization that people have when they realize that they actually have to stop eating sugar, right? But I don't want to digress into the sugar addiction issue. Let's just put that out there. And my wife points out to me all the time that maybe the biggest issue with all of this is the fact that if people don't want to utilize the fork in the road, which is the medical establishment's viewpoint on this, which is don't worry, your metabolic disease, whether it's diabetes, obesity, whether it's the gout situation, don't worry, we have lots of drugs. The disease is not curable, but it is and it is progressive, but we've got some really good drugs for you. And don't worry, like anyone who's out there right now knows about the weight loss drugs, Wegovy and Ozempic. It will only cost you $1,300 a month for this. But anyway, I'm digressing again. Anyway, my point is when people think about reversing, and I'm serious about that, reversing diabetes or putting gout in remission. And I don't want to use the word reversibility with gout yet, because quite frankly, the good biochemical data behind the difference between remission and reversal is not out there yet. But I know that if you're good about the lifestyle changes that I'm going to be talking about, that you can have it in remission. You can stop having the painful flares. So there's nuances about it. And by the way, gout remission is significantly harder than diabetes reversal or obesity reversal. Those issues are pretty responsive right away when you start cutting out the macronutrients. But anyway, the title of today's talk is, if you won't do it for yourself, if you're not willing to make the lifestyle changes to reverse these chronic diseases, to put gout in remission for yourself, then do it for your grandson or do it for your granddaughter. And that picture on my canvas this morning, that's my grandson. And he's about 4 months old now. And what I would say to you is that really the premise of this talk today is to think about, because most of these chronic diseases, people, are happening to the baby boomers, right? We're aging now. It's so common for someone to become 60 years old and suddenly get that email from their doctor, or maybe it's an actual like conversation in the examination room, and they go, well, by the way, the blood work that we ran the last time you were here shows that you're diabetic, or like in my case when I was 60, pre-diabetic and a gout sufferer. And that's when I got the lecture, well, change to a Mediterranean diet and get more exercise, except for the fact that I was a third-year CrossFit athlete when I had that conversation. And I'm sitting there going, and we're going to have plain talk this morning, you guys. I was sitting there going, what the hell? Are you serious? I'm pre-diabetic and you're telling me to get more exercise, and I'm in a CrossFit gym pounding out those exercises 5 to 6 days a week. You know, it's like, what does that mean exactly? And how can I be pre-diabetic? I already was eating a Mediterranean diet, but I was eating the standard American diet. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that this morning, because there were definitely almost everyone that I've talked to for 5 years, every single conversation that I've had, all of the intake stuff that I've done, again, the electronic forums, anyone you talk to is always like, well, I'm eating a healthy diet. I'm already eating a healthy diet. The level of defensiveness is in the extreme. But when you sit down and you start to take that apart, and you identify what most people are eating from the time they get up until they go to bed at night, it's not anywhere close to a healthy diet. The level of added sugar, the amount of hyperglycemia, in the case of adults, the presence of alcohol, the processed food that brings in umami in the extreme, that would be glutamate, inosine monophosphate, adenosine monophosphate, plus the salt, plus the added sugar in anything coming out of a package, a bottle, or when you go to a restaurant. I don't know how many, in terms of my extended family, you guys have no idea how often this comes at me at the dinner table. And then we go out to a restaurant and I watch these guys ordering, and they're thinking, okay, I'm going to get some protein, right? And it shows up breaded, right? It's like, bam. Okay. What was that? What was that comment I just heard about not being hyperglycemic? And you're eating that chicken breast that's covered in, it's not only breaded, but that material that whatever that substance is that they whipped up in the kitchen that makes this thing, the breaded look or whatever, in addition to the glucose content there, probably had added sugar in it and salt and, maybe even MSG, for God's sakes. I mean, that you just open fructose uric acid metabolism with a bang, right? So these issues are so prevalent in our culture. And when you get to be 60 years old, 52% of us are pre-diabetic or diabetic, and 74% are overweight and obese. 4%, and this percentage is climbing, are having their first gout flares. So this is a really serious issue. And if you won't make the changes for yourself, then think about your grandson or think about your granddaughter, right? This is a fantastic opportunity. I'm 65 years old and going forward into these years, I am so seriously thinking about how do I want this little person to know me? And when I think back on my own life and my own memories of my grandparents, those memories were lodged in nursing homes. And, grandparents who were on oxygen and not able to get around. And I used to dread, as a young child, going to see my grandmother, the longest surviving one out of the bunch, because it was going to be a miserable experience in the nursing home, in the room where they were, because they, number one, barely knew how to interact with me. They were never really a part of my life. And now here they are in this situation, and they're not even capable of doing anything other than maybe holding you in their lap for a little while. And I'm thinking, how am I going to be in the life of this precious being over the next 20 years or hopefully 30 years? And I don't want him to know me only insofar as coming to visit me in a situation where I'm incapacitated to do anything. I want to do stuff with this kid. I want to take him rock climbing. Yes, I said that. And I want to go scuba diving with him. And I'm 65 and this kid's 4 months old. How am I going to facilitate this? Well, I'm not going to do it if I let my health go to pot. And health is probably another one of these things we ought to be talking about, because the definition of health, one thing that I know since I turned 60, is definitely not our cultural definition, which I went to the doctor and he says, I'm pretty good. Maybe a couple of markers, right? I'm overweight. Maybe you've crossed that line in the BMI, and he says that I'm obese and I need to lose some weight, so I need to exercise more. But generally, I'm in good health. Really, is that how we want to define it? I would challenge all of you out there to think about how you define it. Now, in an effort to talk about metabolism here relative to what's going on in the standard American diet on a biochemical level, I want to focus on this diagram a little bit. So I believe we can break down our biochemical health into different states. We have the white state, and Robert Lustig talks about this a lot. In the white state, we're mostly in a burning mode. So we have glucose coming in from our meals, but it's relatively low glucose, right? We're not eating something which is a hyperglycemic meal. So the glucose gets funneled into these metabolic pathways that are important to us. The glycolysis, which is connected to our mitochondria. And most of that energy is going into providing substrates to the mitochondria that can be burned in order to produce the energy that we need to do the things that we're doing. But on the standard American diet, which is generally hyperglycemic, with the adult, there's probably alcohol involved in the evenings, high in umami. This is the processed food and the processed meats, added sugars, which bring in the fructose. We shift in predominantly, I'm going to talk about this from the point of view of the liver. We shift the liver from a burning state into a state which is dominated by storage, the production of fat, the induction of systemic inflammation, which in ancient humans was designed to stimulate our immune system, and the alteration of our nitric oxide regulatory pathways, which cause an elevation in blood pressure, and downstream of that drives cardiovascular disease. Now, in today's talk, we're going to talk about the component of exercise and what it has to do with the improvement of our metabolic health. And you'll notice on my diagram that there's a pink circle in here that says exercise in it and metabolic flexibility. The reason why this is pink is because exercise drives a unique metabolic state. But in this world, we can think about the difference between the white state, which is mostly burning, and the red state as being two different kinds of individuals. In the white state, we have somebody who's in the low carb lifestyle. They've been eating low carb for a long time. I don't mean somebody who's like, doing the fad thing. I'm going to eat keto for a couple of weeks, and then I'm going to go back to the way I was eating before because I need to reset my metabolism. Sorry, people, it doesn't work that way. If you want to be in the white state, this is a metabolic state that is functionally driven by being in a low carb environment, which has eliminated eating chronic hyperglycemia. The alcohol is definitely being modulated. It's not something that is any longer in a daily habit. We're not eating processed food or processed meat, and we've eliminated altogether added sugar, right? So this is somebody who's actually living in the low carb environment. I've been living that way now for it's over 5 years now, right? I'm 5.5 years in this lifestyle. So when I exercise, and I don't want to get into the biochemical nuances of this morning because it will just sidetrack me altogether and make the presentation way too long. There is a shift in states. And if you're in the white state, this is the way I'm going to talk about it, the low carb environment, you're going to shift into a white state exercise platform, right? If you're in the red state and you're a red state athlete, you are also going to shift states, but you're going to shift to an athletic state, which is also red state. In order to simplify things this morning, I just made the circle pink because regardless of where you are, whether you're in the standard American train ride to hell down the road, when you exercise, there's still going to be a significant benefit to it because you're going to shift into this metabolic state, which is different, which is dependent more or drives burning and so on. If you're a white state athlete, however, the benefits are more significant. The level of burning is significantly higher. We know if you follow Noakes's work, for example, and the work of Volek and Finney, that there's significantly more metabolic flexibility in somebody who shifts from the white state into the white exercise state than there is for somebody who's on the standard American diet and they shift into the red exercise state. So for the sake of this morning's conversation, I've combined the two exercise states into this pink circle to indicate that when you're exercising, you are in a distinct metabolic state, that it will be influenced by where you are in the resting state in your eating habits. I want to just glance before I go on at the comments here. I see my daughter's on this morning. We are partners. She is the T part of Dr. Pete and T, and I'm really glad she's here. I hope she can hang around for most of the discussion, because I think she'll have some things to say when we start talking about other aspects of bringing this lifestyle together. So the first thing I want to say, and this goes out not only to the people that are listening to this that suffer from gout, but this goes out to the broader community and also to the low carb space, where I think their viewpoint of gout is about as misguided as it is in our general culture. And that is the following issue. If you suffer from gout, the likelihood that you don't also suffer from other metabolic dysfunctions is very, very small. And the reason for that is the central biochemistry that drives gout also drives diabetes, obesity, Alzheimer's disease. It is the fundamental metabolic driver or biochemical driver of the carbohydrate insulin model of obesity. Yeah, there is a level of biochemistry underneath that generalized model that drives hyperinsulinemia and insulin resistance. When we go to the next level biochemically on this, we can see how fructose uric acid metabolism is integrated with glycolysis and its connections to the mitochondria. And when we shift from the white state to the red state, we actually uncouple the mitochondria from glycolysis. We prevent the entry of acyl-CoAs into the mitochondria where they can be burned. We downregulate beta oxidation, the conversion of those fatty acids in the mitochondria to energy. And there's a whole cascade of things that are happening there that, once again, I'm digressing into. So let's take a closer look at this. Gout sufferers, 74% of us have high blood pressure. That was true for me 5 years ago. Doctor's office. You're pre-diabetic, you're suffering from gout, you have high blood pressure, yada, yada, yada. You could see ramifications with my kidneys, for God's sakes. I mean, all of this stuff. 74% of us, gout sufferers, hypertension. Approximately three quarters of us, chronic kidney disease, at least in the second stage. And I've worked with clients who actually were in stage 4 chronic kidney disease eating this way, right? Over half of us are obese. This is super common. A full quarter are also type 2 diabetics. A quarter of us have dealt with kidney stones. And then 10 to 14% heart and stroke issues, right? So the first thing to understand about this is that metabolic diseases are systemic. Gout is both systemic and local. Systemic and local. Now, how do we turn this around? And so this is where we're going to step back, and I am going to get less technical about the biochemistry. And I'm calling this list of things, originally 5 years ago, my daughter and I called this the Makes Me Healthy program to get healthy. But this is a 360-degree view of what it takes to become healthy. And again, I'm going to say, what is the definition of health, right? And to be very clear to my listeners and anyone out there who might see this presentation down the line, I'm going to say what health is not. And it is not going to the doctor and getting this ridiculous viewpoint of a couple biomarkers. So I have literally just a handful of biomarkers and being told, oh, well, the triglycerides are a little bit high, your HDL is a little bit low, and you're pre-hypertensive. But hey, don't worry. Just try to eat a little bit more healthy. They're going to use that word, only they aren't talking about lowering the hyperglycemic nature of your food, right? They're not talking about that. If you push a little harder on that, he or she is going to tell you, well, there are good carbs and there are bad carbs, and yum, 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 down the line we go with this business, right? And send you home and say, just get a little more exercise and work a little harder on your Mediterranean diet, and I'll see you next year, right? Okay, so healthy is not literally falling down on the floor when you walk into the doctor's office and having that guy go CPR on you, right? Having him not pounding on your chest. Healthy is not being sick, right? That's basically the way most of our culture looks at this. And if you go through that way of thinking your whole life, that leads to significant complacency, which then brings me back to the point of my grandson. How do you live a life when you're older, like me at 65, so that you actually can go out and do things with that kid, so that when you die, that child is going to look back and he will have had, or she will have had, if it's a granddaughter, a relationship with you that is more significant than just holding them on your lap and you're sitting there in a nursing home in a diaper on oxygen, right? This can be a key issue. Now, when we look at getting 360, how are we going to do that? Well, the biggest thing sitting here is the food environment. And the vast majority of my talks are focused on that. It's cutting the hyperglycemia out, cutting the alcohol down to something that is intermittent and maybe altogether, completely eliminating sugar and being authentic about that and not unrealistic about it, and being honest about it, actually getting rid of the sugar, the added sugar that is in our lives, right? And not eating processed food. That includes anything coming out of a bottle, a box, any way that you want to cut into it. And even going to a restaurant has to be done intelligently, beyond listening to this day. If you do anything the next time you go into a restaurant, don't just arbitrarily order off the menu thinking about how things are going to taste. Think about, for once, what they're doing to that food and how it's coming out of the kitchen. And then we have these other components, and I'm not saying these things don't matter. They do matter, but at least 85% is going to be based on the food. What's the rest of this? Well, exercise is a big deal, and we're going to turn our focus to that right now. Then there's also the issue of stress, and sleep is huge. Sleep apnea in our population, in the older population, is really a big deal. And if you haven't been tested for sleep apnea, you need to do it. And the reason it's so important is because it generates hypoxic events that happen on and off all night long. And hypoxia, people, activates the same biochemistry that we're talking about with the food issue. And so if you're suffering from gout and you have not been tested for sleep apnea, go out and get her done and find out. And if you are suffering from it, get it treated. And by the way, you don't have to do it via the CPAP business. There's a lot of other options that exist out there that are significantly less invasive. And then number 5 down there is the environment. Now, when I use the word environment, I'm not talking about green trees and mountains and things like that, although going out into the natural environment is really good for you, and it drops our stress down, and there's a lot of benefits to that. But number 5, I'm really talking about the social environment, because when you make a decision to do the things that I'm talking about here, making a change to your food environment, you are going to get significant pushback. Not only potentially, and this is one of the most important issues, that pressure can really come from a spouse if you don't help them understand what's going on. And without spousal support, this is almost going to be, it's going to feel impossible to do this. You're going to need the help of your wife or husband for sure with this. But then there's the extended family. Then there are the work relationships and everything that extends out from that. And there will be a lot of pushback there. Even after doing this for 5 years, we have a particular a couple that my wife and I, visit frequently, right? We go to dinner together and all this. And every single time we get together, I hear about it. Oh, surely you should try this. It's so good, right? You can try this. Don't you want to have fun? Yum, 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 yum. Down the road we go, and you've got to be prepared for that. The social environment can be very difficult to deal with, and you've got to think about how important your health is to you. And you're going to have to stand up for yourself, and you're going to have to make decisions. And if every single time you go to a social, we have Thanksgiving coming up and Christmas coming up, and those environments are going to be super intense with those extended friend, community that are going to try to push this stuff on you. And remember that about 88% of our culture is metabolically unhealthy. So that person trying to push the food on you, more than likely, is just as sick as you. And they either don't know it or they're in complete denial about it. And this business of pushing this stuff on you has more to do with them assuaging their own negative feelings about themselves than it does with making you eat it, right? So you've got to learn how to say no to that stuff and how to deal with that pressure. But again, I'm digressing, so let's get to the meat of the matter. This slide, if you follow me, you've seen it a lot. The whole point is, and I'm not going to dwell on it, you've got to eliminate the main factors that drive the shift from the white state to the red state. All right, enough said. So exercise, what's the deal with this? All right. Here's the thing about this morning, and it's going to be somewhat controversial. All right. I'm just going to warn you about that, because what we hear from our culture is, oh, don't worry. Just go out and walk, right? Just do that 3 times a week for about 30 minutes. And that, research has shown that that's all that you need to do. All right. And I got news for you. I adamantly disagree with this. It's not all that we need to do. And the issue is, especially the older that we get, and I'm going to lay out my argument for this, is that there's more to this exercise than just the cardiovascular component. And one of the things that really bothers me about my own space in the low carb space, and I just went to a meeting in San Diego at the end of the summer, and we heard talks. There were influencers that got up there and basically reiterated this. There's this tendency right now, or philosophy in our group, that we need to be apologetic, that we need to not scare the people that we're talking to. If we scare them, if we intimidate them, then they're not going to do this stuff. And like I said, I was away for a while, and now I'm back. And one of the reasons that I was away is because I really didn't know how I felt about this. This whole argument, you've got to meet them where they're at. Okay, you do have to meet everyone where they're at. I'm not disputing that. But also, I don't think we should sugarcoat this stuff at all. You need to say what it is, what the deal is. And the deal is going out for walks 3 times a week. That's really good. This is probably the best starting place of anything I can think of that you need to do exercise wise, right? But it's only the starting place. And these are the reasons why. You'll notice here I'm walking because I'm a rock climber now. I brought that back into my life, and I'm pushing the envelope on it as much as I can for somebody who's 65 years old. This is my good friend, Mike. I don't think he'll mind if I mention his name. And we are on our way to go climbing in the Needles back in the crags here on this particular day. And you'll notice that we have big packs on. Those packs weigh probably 30 pounds. And on my front there, I'm the guy on the left. I'm carrying a rope that weighs at least 10 pounds, right? This is a good example of being out for a walk, but with weight on our backs, so that we have to interact in a three-dimensional way more extensively with our environment. And even though the trail here is flat and you can see it's graveled, we are going to be soon walking on a trail that is irregular, that is up and that is down, and that we have to negotiate rocks and boulders. And this is the way that humans were evolved in order to interact with their environment. And I will talk about why being this way with our environment is important to our health. One of the questions I regularly get that I regularly get from gout sufferers is, what about the uric acid? Yeah, uric acid is going to go up when we exercise. And I'm showing you here the relationship between the intensity of the exercise and elevated uric acid. Uric acid is going to rise most intensely during high intensity exercise. High intensity exercise would be, for example, going out and doing a sprint or lifting heavy weight while you're doing something that is very, very fast, like running down the street carrying a 50-pound pack on your back. That would be a high intensity exercise. Uric acid will rise most intensely in your circulatory system under an exercise like that. Strength training, picking up a heavy weight off the ground, is the next, if we're ranking this, it's going to be the next elevated uric acid. And then general movement, like if you're just out for a walk or whatever, that could involve light jogging or whatever, the uric acid is going to go up. Here's one of the things that you need to understand about uric acid. It is an oxidation reduction molecule that is required for human health. It operates in circuits with other oxidation reduction, small signaling molecules, to regulate various aspects of metabolism. One of its regulatory functions in the liver is to signal and drive the systemic inflammatory state, fats and glycogen storage, along with water, and the alteration in nitric oxide signaling, which enhances the movement of the nutrients coming into all the various organs that need that. But uric acid and lactate, for example, are also required in similar oxidation reduction networks to signal and drive these changes in state from the white state into an athletic state, or the red state into a red athletic state, as an example. So the concern for a gouter over the fact that you're going to elevate uric acid with exercise is something that should not prevent you from doing exercise. There's a reason why the uric acid is being elevated, and it is important to our health. So gouters, exercise. So why exercise? These are the physiological reasons to do so. Okay, I have a question coming in here. I'm going to address these questions when I get to the end of my presentation, and I need to start moving more quickly with it in order to do that. But I'm going to come back to this question. Someone says HTN. Please clarify the definition of that abbreviation, because I don't know what it is off the top of my head. Right? I need to see that. Just make another post and spell out what you mean there. All right. So why do exercise? Here are the physiological reasons. And And the top two are the reason these guys are telling you that going out and walking 3 times a week for a half an hour is enough, right? It has to do with cardiovascular health, improving the function of the heart. They also will argue that there's a muscle effect, but honestly, right, the biggest initiating health effect that we can have on muscle and building muscle tissue is if we are having, as part of the going out and walking every week, activities that actually target muscle mass and the improvement of muscle function, and that requires having high intensity activities that we're doing each week, along with strength training. And then there is the mitochondrial argument, which is really massive here and very, very meaningful and super important. Exercising in a way where we have high intensity, along with some strength training in there, along with the movement. And later I'm going to talk about the combination of activities with the movement improves mitochondrial health. It increases the biogenesis of mitochondria. So we actually increase the density of the numbers of mitochondria in the muscle tissue and so on, which means that we process incoming macronutrients more efficiently. We have a more efficient system, both when we're in the resting white state and also in the athletic state, right? More efficient in terms of what we're doing in the processing and the production of energy. This is also going to be true in the red state. If you cannot, absolutely, you see no way that you're not going to eliminate added sugar, you're not willing to cut into the carbs, you're going to continue to drink every day. The athleticism is still very important for this functionality. And then oftentimes what's not talked about is the athleticism is also going to improve organ health. In terms of glucose disposal, muscle tissue by far is the most important aspect of this, followed by the liver, because the muscle is going to store about 1,500 calories in glycogen, approximately. And the liver is going to store about approximately 500 calories of glycogen. And then our storage capacity and then manipulation of that storage, right? When you're fat burning the available calories that are there, this is all going to be optimized in the white state. But glucose disposal in the adipose tissue is very important. And then we have the brain, of course, which is utilizing about 20% of the energy coming through, and then all of our other tissues. So we want to optimize the storage capacity, but not only storage capacity, but the capacity to access that energy when we need it. And that will be optimized if we are spending the majority, the chronic time that we are awake in the white state versus red state. Now, we can look at a mortality curve for this, and without going into the fine details of it, we are basically in a mode after we get born, right? That we are building our systems up until approximately the 40s. For some people, when they start to degenerate slowly, this happens even earlier in the 30s, on average around the 40s, and then we start to see this decline. And we know that when we get into our 60s, that we start to lose various capacities. Our ability, our strength is decreased, our power is decreased, and there are other aspects of this that I'm going to argue about this morning that I think are very, very significant and that are completely left out when people make this argument that all you need to do each week is get out and walk for 30 minutes, 3 times a week. Definitely those aspects are being left out. But you can see that if you're not having activity here, that would be the curve in the orange, that all-cause mortality is much higher for those individuals. And when we bring all the pieces together, when we've made the changes in what we're putting in our mouth, when we are exercising adequately over the course of a week, when we have addressed the issues surrounding sleep and stress and all that stuff together, if we put all of that onto this curve, the curve is not really going to look any different. But the red aspect of it will probably be extended out to the right more. And there will be more of a demarcation between where you see the orange curve heading into the horizontal axis versus where you see the red one. So this is the slide that I want to use to really drive home the point I want to make this morning. And the point I want to make this morning is going out and walking on a sidewalk 3 times a week for 30 minutes. It's not enough. And why isn't it enough? Because once you get into your 60s, your fall risk really escalates, especially for people that have been inactive their entire lives, right? Think orange line. And one of the reasons, even if you start walking and you're doing what the recommendation is and you're doing it 3 days a week, you're not really doing anything to alter this phenomenon that you see right in front of you. Anecdotally, I've seen this upfront and personal. I went out for a walk about a week and a half ago, right by my house. And because I'm doing the movement all week long, if I'm not working out at the bare minimum on that particular day, if I'm not getting to the climbing gym or going climbing outside, then I'm going to go for a walk, right? I do this. I live the life that I'm talking about. I am a role model and a leader for this. So I'm not preaching to you something that I'm not willing to do myself. And on that walk, I came upon, this literally happened, an old lady who was very much in this exact position on the side of the street with her back against the curb. She'd fallen down and there she was. She couldn't get up, right? I've seen this in particular with more than one member of my extended family in their 60s, out walking, boom, down they go. Why is that happening? And the reason why it is happening, along with all the metabolic things that you're not benefiting from just by going for the walk, is because they are not challenging themselves anymore, and they haven't for decades, other than walking in an environment that is flat, that is not irregular. They're not paying attention to their strength or to the development of power or to the development of a number of other factors. And so here are the 10 graces. This is the credo that I live by. And you can see at the very top of this list, there are the physiological components that I already talked about, the cardiovascular aspect of this, biogenesis of mitochondria and so on, and all that business, right? And that's what you're getting the benefit from when you do this walk 3 times a week, right? No argument. I have no argument with that. But then look at the rest of this, right? Where is the rest of this? In walking on perfectly flat sidewalks or perfectly groomed trails around the lake 2 or 3 times a week, whatever, taking the dogs for a walk, where is the rest of this stuff that allows you to live in a 3-dimensional environment in a more functional capacity, which down the road will allow you to interact with your grandchildren in a way which is beyond sitting in the chair on an oxygen tank with the last foot that was amputated elevated after the surgery, right? Where is that activity? Because this is necessary in terms of getting the health, right? Thinking about health on a different plane than going into the doctor and having them tell you, well, yeah, don't worry, we better elevate the amount of diabetes drugs you're on, right? Your weight isn't coming down, so now we're going to put you on Wegovy, and don't worry, it's only going to cost $1,300 a month. Well, you'll see that number 2 is stamina. That's the ability to function all day long in in a world where you're moving around and you're doing things like you need to go out and trim the lawn, for example, or you need to go and move a box of books that are sitting in the driveway out because you're going to have a garage sale or something on the weekend, right? You don't have to invite somebody over to do that for you. You have the stamina to be able to function all day long without having to give up the ghost and basically move to the chair. We have the strength and the power there, and I've already talked about this, all right? It's really important for people over the course of a week to be picking up heavy objects. You've got to figure out how to do that. And power, what is power? Power is the ability not only to pick up that heavy box of books, but to pick up that box and move it in an efficient, quick time frame from the floor to the table. That's power. The ability to move something that is heavy to another location quickly, right? Flexibility. This is something that I recently learned about myself because I am actively trying to climb hard again, to climb at the upper, harder levels of rock climbing. And I just assumed that my flexibility was the same as it was in my 40s, right? And I did an assessment and I learned, I was like, oh my God, are you serious? I can't spread my feet. And granted, I don't expect to do the splits. I'm not being ridiculous here, but I'm talking about the ability to spread my feet wide enough in order to facilitate the things that I want to do on the rock. And don't make the mistake. If you're sitting there thinking right now, well, I'm not a rock climber, so why the hell would I care about being able to split my feet? You got to think about how that kind of capability is affecting your ability to move on the planet, doing other kinds of activity, whatever that is. Bending over to pick up a box of books requires flexibility. So flexibility is a really important aspect. So you should be doing things throughout the week, and I'm not talking about doing the same stuff every single day. I'm talking about breaking things up, but thinking about introducing some things into your life that push the flexibility and the speed, being able just to move at an efficient way around. Coordination is really a big deal. And in our age group, again, especially in my extended family and the clients that I've worked, I've witnessed the inability, when somebody has to do something that requires reaching out to touch it, that may require also bending over to do that at the same time, issues with coordination. So our exercising program should involve doing things on a weekly basis that require having to move objects in certain directions that require having to work on coordination. And then there's agility, right? And this is where, and I talk a lot with my clients and also with extended family members about don't walk the same trail every single darn week, right? Get in the car and go to some places where the trail is going to require that you actually have to move in an uneven environment. That needs to be there, right? Walking on a trail that is irregular, having to step up and step down off of objects. This is really important, right? Maintaining and trying to push back on the decrease in naturally with aging of all of these things, because all of these things will decrease naturally, right? The strength, the power, the flexibility, the coordination, the agility, the accuracy of some type of movement, and balance is really a big deal. That's why these people are falling. And my God, I've seen it. I've seen extended families bend over to pick something up and go down, right? That is an issue with balance, the accuracy, and the agility. All of these things combined together, the ability to do something functional that is required in our daily life. And as a result of that, going down on the floor and falling. And you know what? This is a big deal. If you fall down and break a bone, like pelvis, you're going to the hospital. And going to the hospital with a broken pelvis, you guys, as much as you know that the outcome of that cannot be good, right? The older you get, the higher the chances of pneumonia or some other disease that you literally contract while you're in the hospital, and then that's the end of it. You come home, even if you come home, some people actually die of that, but if you come home, then, you know, when you reattain your health, at what level are you at? What level are you going to get to? Think of that. Think of the orange slope of that line that we talked about. Right there, the orange slope. Where are you going to be on that line? Are you going to be out there on the red, or are you going to be on the yellow? That's the question. And recovering from some kind of injury like that, the question we have to ask if we're older is, how far back can I get? Where can I get to? This is the question I ask myself literally every single day as I age, because I'm 65, I'm going to be 66 in May. And we all know as we age, the older we get, the faster time seems to go. May is going to be here. That's my birthday. And now I'm going to be 66. And my question is, with everything that I do, how far back can I get? How far up that line can I walk? How far up there can I get? How much can I push that line out, at least of the things that I can control in my life? Obviously, we don't control accidents. Accidents happen. Maybe there is a rare cancer or some other deal like that that is sitting there waiting for me in my genetics. How do I know? But with metabolism, and exercise is a metabolic driver, we can control that. We can control how much we do, and we can control what we do. So what is the basic criteria here? What can we do? Well, the movement thing, going out for walks 3 days a week, that's a good thing. Don't stop doing that. And if you're not doing it yet, put on some shoes and go out, even if it's out to the mailbox and back, and go a little bit further every single day. But in the back of your mind, this other stuff is going to have to be there. You need to be thinking about that. What can I do to pick up heavy objects every week? And you know what? Go get a coach. There are gyms that you can join. Pop up and get a trainer for a little bit. They can give you ideas, and then you don't actually have to, even if you don't want to actually like lift the weights, there are body weight things that you can do to improve your strength. There's a lot of things that you can do. I believe too that you need an activity. Those of us that are 60 or older, think about what you used to like to do when you were a kid and start doing it again, right? What does having the activity do that will enhance this going out and walking 3 times a week for 30 minutes? Activities make you interact with your 3-dimensional environment in ways that are diverse and different, and your brain will adapt to that, right? What are you gaining as an advantage? Your agility is going to go up, your strength and power, all that stuff is going to get elevated. Your balance, your accuracy, right? If it's just ice skating around on an ice skating rink, and you used to play hockey, get a stick and start knocking some rocks around, right? All of that stuff's going to help your accuracy, and these things that I talked about, the 10 graces, are all going to improve. You need to have some high intensity exercise in there, right? This needs to be an activity that really causes that heart rate to go up and be elevated in an extreme way for a short period of time, and can very easily be combined with lifting weights, right? Doing the activity with something in your hands that weighs something. And then the strength training, and there is no argument about the benefit of deadlifting and back squatting, the bench press, the overhead pressing. There's so much benefit in being able to do that, because all of that stuff addresses core strengths. And the core is so important when we talk about your balance, your agility, and accuracy. Okay, this is me when I was eating the standard American diet. This is the majority of Americans that are out there, or even our worldwide population at this point, right? It's a 73-pound pack of sugar, right? That's me. That's the burden that you've got on you. Red state life. This is me on the low carb lifestyle. 2 low carb vegetables and a good steak on the plate. And then I figured I would finish the talk today with this slide, which is a collage of the way I live now. And in the upper left-hand corner, you can see there I'm deadlifting. Any of the personal trainers that are watching this right now will see that my form needs some work. Yeah, it does, man. And it's something that is progressive, and I'm still working on my form with this. But you got to do it, people. You need the adaptation. You need to fight back at older age against the natural forces that are driving our decline, right? Think about how far out can I push that red line? That's what you need to be thinking about. Next slide to the right is the recent backpacking trip that we made to the Grand Canyon. You can see me in the back there with a pretty big pack on my back. It was about 40 pounds by my reckoning. And it was my wife there on the left, and she's always planning these really rigorous trips. This one was no less challenging. Then to the right, I'm doing some strength training there, but focused on mobility to get my shoulders to open up. Over further on the right is rock climbing with my friend Mike, and I'm doing that's a crack climb there. That was a couple of summers ago. Down and on the left, you can see high intensity training there. I'm doing box jumps. I'm 62 years old in that slide. Moving to the right, I'm working on the activation of my shoulders, hanging from the bar with one arm. And to the right of that, you can see I'm doing dumbbell snatches. And then to the right, to close the discussion this morning, I'll go to the questions. This has nothing to do with exercise, but you'll notice I'm wearing a device. This is when I was sleep tested to look at sleep apnea, and it came back that I was mildly afflicted after I went low carb. This is 5 years into being low carb. I just recently did this. A lot of people assume when they go to the white state, in other words, when you shift to this way of eating, which is low carb, that sleep apnea is, I've heard influencers using this term, quote unquote, cured. Not true. Sleep apnea definitely improves when you eliminate living in the red state lifestyle, but it is not cured. So remember that if you do suffer from sleep apnea, that you're talking about repeated hypoxic events throughout the night, and it needs to be addressed because it opens and drives red state metabolism. So I'm just finishing with this slide because this will be a topic that we're going to talk about coming up soon. I was sleep tested. I have mild sleep apnea, and so not only was I tested, but I'm also being treated. And you don't need to go with the CPAP machine. You can, in fact, there are other devices and other scenarios out there available, and I'm being treated, and I've eliminated my sleep apnea. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and close. Here's where you can find me. My email address is there. I have 2 websites where I'm operating, drpetesgoutintensive.com, also drpetent.com for our sugar addiction, type 2 diabetes reversal programs. And then recently I opened a Patreon to bring gout remission to the masses. It's a very inexpensive program with all the same support, literally, and education that is or was available in the gout intensive that I was running on Saturdays last year. All right, with that, I'm going to go to the questions and then I'll be signing off. Okay, so let me go. This is an important question that's being asked about high blood pressure. And the short answer is yes. When you shift to a low carb lifestyle, so you go from the red state to the white state, one of the first things that you see happen, that literally, if you're monitoring biomarkers, will be that your glucose is going to start to normalize within a matter of days. If you're finger sticking, you will see this flat out. And the other thing that happens is you'll see your blood pressure start to go down. So I measure my blood pressure. I don't know if I have my notebook sitting right here in front of me somewhere. Oh yeah, here it is. So I just did this for my followers on YouTube, and my blood pressure the other morning, mid-morning, in an activated state like I am right now, was 129/79. Usually, if I measure my blood pressure right after I get up in the morning, it's like 109/69, something like that. Anyway, I went from being hypertensive to having relatively, well, it's normalized blood pressure. So the answer to that question is yes. Yeah. So carnivore is the way a lot of people go. It seems very effective at eliminating uh, uh, gout flares. However, I need to say publicly right now, those that are listening, that some carnivores start to flare repeatedly. And we don't really understand why that is going on. All right. But one thing that we find that seems helpful to them is that if they modulate the protein, and what I mean by modulating is not eating less of it, but making sure they're not eating the same protein day in and day out. So I'll give you an example. I've worked with some clients that were eating ribeye steaks every single day, all day long, right? They were eating twice a day, but they were eating large amounts of ribeye steak. But as soon as they started to modulate that, and or they were doing the oyster thing, as soon as they started to modulate that, they were able to reduce out of the gate the frequency of their flares. Whoops. Okay, I answered that one. This is just my daughter who's monitoring the conversation this morning. Good morning to her, and let me know later how the little dude is doing. All right, just saw him last night. These guys are going to be here soon. I'm really looking forward to taking my son on walkabouts again. All right, with that, you guys, I'm going to be closing out this morning. I've been on over an hour. You guys have a really, really good day, and I will see you next week. And remember, go white state, right? Shift out of the red state, go low carb, and let me know how things are going, and we will talk next week.